what have we learned in 2023 that we probably didn't expect? We've seen the commoditization of the UCAS market. We've seen this greater focus on cybersecurity. We've seen this new emphasis on artificial intelligence. I think most important of all, the pandemic is now years over, but its impact remains in terms of remote and hybrid workers. I think the biggest one of all, though, is just getting harder to earn a buck. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we came to this presentation. But before I do that, give me next slide, John. So we have a new product that we launched several months ago that's called Office in a Box, that includes your desktop, your server, your storage, your backup. It includes your Microsoft licensing. Okay, it includes your Teams UC, and it includes all your security products. And we deliver this one of two ways. We call it with or without. With licensing is $99.99 per user. And on the next slide, our without is $68.99. And we want everybody to know that, just toggle back and forth for me, John. We want everybody to know that at $99.99, a third of that is based on the topic that we're going to be covering today. Now, I think I have one more slide after this, and then I'm going to introduce you guys. So one of the things that's unique about this product is it's the only sort of full desktop infrastructure, storage, backup, licensing, UC, and security product that's offered in the market today, but we're still the only ones that pay pretty darn big spiffs on it. So there's a lot of opportunity to make money, especially when you understand the commoditization of UCAS and of and what we're still seeing as this move to remote and hybrid workspace. So let me give you the beginnings of something real quick. I got a press release today, which I thought was really interesting. And it was from the folks at Channel Partners. And it was talking about RapidScale's acquisition of LogicWorks. And they made a statement. This is today, saying LogicWorks is a gold certified Microsoft Azure partner. What we're going to learn today is those designations of gold and silver are kind of meaningless right now. So when you start reading things and, talking to different suppliers that talk about, oh, we're a Microsoft Gold partner or a Microsoft Silver partner, those things just don't mean anything anymore. And so we decided that this was clearly a topic that we felt as though there was a lot of interest in the market. Microsoft is confusing. So, I'll tell you right now, I look more like a sales partner than I do like an Evolve IP employee after 15 years. So the genesis of this was Zach and I put together 16 questions that we felt were the biggest questions that we've been asked over the years about Microsoft. And we sent them over to Scott and John, and they built their presentation around these questions. So what was going to be their presentation followed by Q&A from us is going to be their presentation followed by Q&A from you. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to John Dougherty and Scott Arnold. They are from our product team. They are Microsoft specialists, and they've got a lot of really good information to get you guys ready for next year. So Scott or John, whichever you guys is taking over.
Thanks, Gary.
Great,
Thanks. I'll just say a brief word about the world of Microsoft and keeping up with it. Like you say, gold, silver, bronze, those are designations that have seen their day and have had their light. Now you're talking about things like, modern work, infrastructure, data, digital, and app innovation. So yeah, things change quickly. And nice to meet you all. I'll be backing up John Dougherty this morning. Scott Arnold from the Compute Product Team. Excited to talk through Microsoft with everyone this morning. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm John Dougherty. I'm going to be going through the various slides on the Microsoft licensing in the cloud. But before I do, I want to take a step back and look at the bigger picture on what Microsoft's cloud really is and kind of start with the basics before I start jumping into the Microsoft licensing. So Microsoft has multiple clouds. The primary one that they have is called the commercial cloud, and it's a global cloud for commercial customers, education, and nonprofit customers. And it provides all the data services for a customer in their region. Their data is hosted in their region, for example, Canada, Europe, and Asia. Now, Microsoft also has public clouds. Primarily, they have a separate cloud for the US government. And that US government includes local governments, it includes state and the federal governments, and it also includes the Department of Defense. Now, the public clouds are totally separate. They are segregated or separated from the commercial cloud. Now, Microsoft also has government clouds for China, and they also have government clouds for Germany and a few others. But one thing to note is if you ever run into a US government customer, you have to understand that if they are GCC High or Department of Defense, they can only obtain their licensing through a Microsoft Volume Licensing contract. So Evolve IP is a CSP partner. We do not sell Microsoft Volume Licensing, so we cannot sell any of the GCC High or the DoD. Also, the government community cloud, which is the lower tier, we also don't sell that as well, only because of the extra stringence that come with that. But we can provide phone services for GCC, but not GCC High or DoD. All right, next I want to talk about what is a customer in Microsoft's cloud services. You'll see the dotted line here. It shows a Microsoft customer tenant. On the left, you have all of the 365 cloud services, and I put some examples in there, Mailbox, the Microsoft 365 apps, Teams, Dynamics, and Windows. Those are just an example. There's a whole lot more that could be on that left-hand side. On the right-hand side, you have the Microsoft Azure subscription services. And each one of those dotted line boxes in there represents an Azure subscription. And a customer can have one or more Azure subscriptions of virtual machines, web hosting, SQL Server, networking, you name it. But the subscription can be anything they want in there, and they can have more than one, and they can pay for them separately. And so they could have a partner that manages one subscription, another partner that manages another. They could also have one of their own that they self-manage. So all of this together uses Azure Active Directory, which is now called Microsoft Entra ID. And this is all of the security features, users, groups, the directory, and concludes multi-factor authentication and conditional access. So that's how a customer's tenant looks conceptually for the Microsoft 365 cloud services and the Azure subscription services. Now let's talk about purchasing Microsoft cloud services and software. Now the current ways to purchase is Microsoft Volume Licensing. That entails an enterprise agreement and the MPSA agreement. And you can purchase all types of Microsoft products that way. The EA is for large tier customers. It's usually a 3-year agreement, and usually the EAs either deal with one of the large resellers like Dell, or they could go directly to Microsoft. But Microsoft also allows to provide very large discounts for these large tier customers. The MPSA is more about mid-tier customers. They can provide on-premise and online services as well. They have a minimum of 250 seats, and they usually have a 3-year agreement as well. Then you get to the Microsoft CSP partners like Evolve IP. So this is for customers that are requiring additional partner services rather than just being a licensing reseller. And we can give out 1 year and monthly agreements on the subscription services, and customer can purchase 365 cloud services and Azure services through a Microsoft CSP partner. The last place a customer can go to purchase is Microsoft's websites, also known as Web Direct. And this is self-service for customers that just want to purchase with a credit card. So these are going to be your really small business customers, 10 to 50 users. But they can purchase all the same things that they can get through a Microsoft CSP partner. So the CSP partner program. So what is it?
Well, hey, John.
Yep.
Super quick. Can you go back one slide? I just want to ask a question.
Sure.
Just for some clarity. We cannot support customers with enterprise agreements, correct?
Yeah, we can't sell it to them.
And how about MPSA? Can we support customers for MPSA?
No, those two programs are volume licensing programs, and we do not sell that.
Gotcha. Fair enough. Thank you.
You bet. So the CSP program is basically an additional layer of support services provided to a customer from a Microsoft partner. We can provision for them. We can migrate their mailboxes into 365. We do their billing and invoicing. I think most of you are probably very familiar with the CSP program. But here's some things you might not know. A customer can be a partner with multiple CSP partners. Okay, so for example, you might have a customer that has one partner that gets their support and licensing for their 365 and Teams Voice, another partner for Dynamics 365, and another one from Azure subscription services. So a customer does not have to focus just on one partner for all of their 365 services. They can go to multiple partners. Another question we get asked a lot about is subscription transfers between CSP partners. And Microsoft does not have a back-end process to transfer any seat-based subscription process products between the CSP partners. However, they do have a back-end process for Azure subscriptions that they just started rolling out in the past year. So what that means is a customer must fulfill their current commitments with their present CSP partner before moving to a new CSP partner, or they will be double billed. Okay, and keep in mind that licensing from most other purchasing channels cannot be transferred to CSP partners either. So it's all about figuring out when the current subscriptions end and then working with the CSP partner to start up the new subscriptions just before the current ones end. That's
Hey, John, I'm sorry. Another quick question, because this is kind of interesting here. While we cannot sell Microsoft EA agreements, we can sell our solutions to people that have a Microsoft EA. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Customers can get their products from multiple purchasing channels.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, now let's get into real quick Microsoft's new commerce experience. Okay, NCE. So Microsoft created a new purchasing model that applies to their new customer agreement that they rolled out about 1.5 years ago. And all Microsoft CSP partners are migrating their customer subscriptions to NCE. Now, NCE is more restrictive compared to the previous purchasing model, which is Microsoft calls it their legacy purchasing model. Their legacy purchasing model, you could purchase, start, stop, move quantities up and down at will at any point in time. But Microsoft has decided to align that more to their volume licensing agreements, where you purchase for a full year, sometimes 3 years. Right now, Microsoft does commitment types of annual, monthly, and triannual. And the triannual is usually for the Dynamics. I've not seen any regular 365 subscription products that have gone for 3 years. But Microsoft has hinted that they will release 3-year commitments for those products. After a product is purchased, there's a 7-day window to make any changes. After the 7-day window closes, the customer is locked in to those quantities and that commitment for that subscription. And there are no midterm cancellations or reductions. Now, Microsoft product pages show the price for an annual commitment, but if a customer wants to do monthly commitments, it'll cost them 20% more. And the commitment locks in Microsoft's current pricing for the term of the commitment. So if you've got a customer that purchased a subscription in January, Microsoft increased the price on February, the customer would not see that price increase into the renewal date the next January. Additionally, you can increase your quantities at any time. Microsoft is more than happy to take the money on the additional quantities, but you cannot decrease the quantity until the commitment's renewal date. So for example, let's say you purchased 100 initially, then you added 50 more to that. That becomes your new floor. You can add 50 more, but you can't take back that 50 and drop back down to 100. So each time the customer increases the quantities, it becomes their new base floor. And the only time that they could reduce those quantities will be on the renewal date. All right.
Now, and John, just to pause there on that last slide, because I think if anything from a customer perspective and learning about new products, this slide is gold in terms of all of the great information that you have included there about the commitment types, the time to make that change. These are all new questions that a lot of folks don't have answers to. And it's pretty simple and straightforward, but there's landmines, there's gotchas in there. In the past, you could increase up and down. That decreased capability has been removed, right? So you just have to be very conscious of these dates and quantity, uplifts, and you essentially pay for the privilege with the monthly commitments to increase up and down on a monthly basis. That's a great way to describe the difference in the license model.
So Scott, just to touch base real quick, that John had mentioned that if you started the year with 100 and you increase to 150, that becomes the new floor. If somewhere after the 150 you added 50 more, does that also then become the new floor, 200?
Yep. Yes, it does.
Mm-hmm.
But here's something to consider as well. So customers can purchase both types of commitments. They could purchase an annual and monthly commitment, both. So they could have an annual commitment for their full-time employees and monthly commitments for temporary employees that might be seasonal. So they pay a little bit more for those seasonal employees, but they can cancel them after 30 days.
Good call.
Yep.
And it's that type of guidance that folks will really find valuable,
All right, so now let's dig into Microsoft subscription services. So Microsoft says that their 365 is the productivity cloud that brings together best-in-class Office apps and powerful cloud services, device management, advanced security, and all the plans are licensed with a single user subscription license assigned to an individual user. That's straight.
Sorry, John. I just want to make sure that everybody's noticing that as John's gone through the presentation, Scott is dropping lots of links into the chat line. So you guys are going to want to grab the ones that you think are valuable. But I know that this has been going on in the background. I just wanted to point it out.
Cool.
Sorry, John.
Yeah, no worries. All good. So there's the Office 365 base plans, which includes the 365 apps, Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive for Business, Microsoft Teams, and a whole bunch more. That's the original OG plans that started 10 years ago. Then they came out with the Microsoft 365 plans. And those include everything that Office 365 has, but then they added licensing for Windows 10, 11 Enterprise and a whole bunch of extra additional security features, which I'm going to get into here in a little bit. So let's talk about the base plans and how they are segregated. We have the Microsoft 365 business plans, they're SMB plans. Customer is limited to 300 licenses for 300 users for each of these. which means they could have 300 basic, 300 standard, and 300 premium licenses in their 365 tenant. Then we have the Office 365 enterprise licenses, which is unlimited, and you have the E1, E3, and E5 plans. And then you also have a single Office 365 frontline worker plan, which also has unlimited licensing. Then we have the Microsoft 365 enterprise plans. That's the E3 and the E5, and that's the plans that include the additional security and the Windows licenses. And then, of course, the Microsoft 365 frontline worker plans, which is the F1 and the F3, which also includes security and Windows licenses. So these are the basic category areas that are sold to the customer for their base plans that they assign to their users. Now, some of the security plans that Microsoft has is enterprise mobility and security. In fact, this was the first one that you normally got paired with an Office 365 enterprise plan. And there's the E3 and the E5. It includes Azure AD or Entra ID, Intune, and Azure Information Protection. Then Microsoft set up the security for Azure AD, and they created Microsoft Entra ID Plan 1 and Plan 2. It used to be called Azure AD Premium P1 and P2. And then they included those plans in the EMS bundle on the left-hand side. Then recently, Microsoft expanded on Microsoft Defender to create security for endpoints and data. The Defender for Endpoint Plan 1 and Plan 2, and the Defender for Office 365 Plan 1 and Plan 2. By the way, that Defender for Office 365 P1 and P2 is all about protecting Microsoft data. We're talking email, we're talking Teams data, SharePoint data, stuff like that. Clicking on links, that's what Defender for Office 365 is all about. Then they created a small business bundle called Defender for Business, which includes a subset of the other two plans, the Endpoint and the Office 365. Then Microsoft, through their 365 E5 plan, which is their Cadillac plan, created security and compliance bundles for that. So you have the M365 E5 compliance bundle, which is included in Microsoft 365 E5, but is an add-on for Microsoft 365 E3. Then we have the M365 E5 security, which is an add-on also for M365 E3, or if a customer has Office 365 E3 and EMS E3 together, they can also add on the M365 E5 security. And then they also have the same thing for their frontline worker plans, the F1 and F3. And if a customer has the Office 365 F3 and the EMS E3, they can then add that on. And by the way, this is the tip of the surface of what Microsoft has on the security side of things. They also have cloud app security. They have security for Azure, security for the servers in Azure. So, but this is the ones that most customers are interested in right now. All right, now real quick, I want to talk about Copilot before I get into the comparisons. Been getting a lot of questions about Copilot. It went generally available November 1st, but it's currently only sold to customers with pre-existing volume license agreements, and they must purchase a minimum of 300 Copilot licenses at $30 per user per month. And it also requires that the users have a base plan of Microsoft 365 E3 and E5 licenses, no trials. Microsoft CSP partners can't sell this yet. Microsoft is ramping this out slowly, and they're saying that be available for CSP partners to purchase for their customers sometime in 2024. I'm guessing it will be late Q1 or sometime in Q2 before that happens, but it should happen in 2024. All right, let's compare some of these plans. So these are the small business plans. You can see up at the top, basic, standard, and premium. And then on the left side, it shows the different features and what you get for those different plans. One thing to note is the premium. The Microsoft 365 Business Premium license is a great deal. It's $23, gives you a good sized mailbox. You get Teams, a 1 terabyte OneDrive, but you get Defender for Business, you get the Enterprise Mobility and Security, and you also get a license for Windows 10, 11 virtual desktops, but on Azure only. The Windows 10, 11 license will also work on hardware if you wanted to step up to the enterprise version. Next up, we have the Office 365. This, like I said before, this is the original 365 plans that Microsoft put together. At the top, you have the E1, E3, and E5, and then the features on the left-hand side. And the E5 includes Defender for Office 365. It's not Defender for Endpoint, but it's Defender for the Teams data, the SharePoint data, email, so on and so forth. It also gives you Teams Phone and audio conferencing and Power BI Pro, which is a good addition. Now we got the Microsoft 365 enterprise-based plans, and as you can see here, we have the additional security and compliance features and the Windows 10, 11 Enterprise. Now, the Microsoft 365 E3 and E5 plans are a little more expensive, the E5 being Microsoft's Cadillac plan, and they both include Windows 10, 11 licenses to allow a user to connect to a virtual desktop, which is a really good deal. You also get the enterprise and mobility security, but you have to step up to the E5 to get the Teams Phone and the Power BI. Now, when it comes to the E5 security and compliance, for a E3 license, it doesn't come with it, but you can add on to it if a customer wants to.
And you can think of on that previous slide there, the VDA at the bottom. If you're using something like a thin client to connect your desktop to your DAS, desktop as a service, right? That thin client doesn't necessarily have a Windows operating system built into it. That's where that license covers those kind of use cases.
Yep, and we're going to show more info on that here shortly.
Yep.
So Microsoft 365 frontline worker plans, this is a comparison here. The big call out here is the difference between F1 and F3. And they both have security, but one has a Windows license and one doesn't. And then Office 365 F3, that's the original frontline worker plan. That's been around for quite a while, and it doesn't have any of the security or the Windows licensing. One thing to note about that F1 license is it's for the web apps, for the Office web apps, it's read-only. So a user assigned that license would not be able to edit like a Word document or a PowerPoint or an Excel spreadsheet. They would only be able to view them. You'd have to step up to the F3 to get that capability. All right, so now some rules surrounding virtual desktops and Microsoft licensing in virtual desktops. And the first thing I want to talk about is the Windows 10, 11 Enterprise products. Now, you'll see the first black bullet there is an E3 or an E5. So those are subscription per user subscription licenses, not per device. And they're paired with users who are using a device that already has Windows Professional activated on it. So for example, a laptop, a corporate laptop. The E5 adds into Defender for Endpoint, which is kind of nice if that's all the customer is looking to do. But keep in mind the E3 and the E5, they have to, the user that's assigned that license has to be using a device with Windows Professional activated and running when they're accessing a desktop. It's not the desktop itself, it's the device used to access the desktop. Now the bullet below that is for the VDA, and this is a little more expensive, but this allows a user to connect to a virtual desktop using any device, thin client, Chromebook, Mac, Linux, etc., whatever they have. And also note that, as Scott pointed out before, the Microsoft 365 E3 and E5 base plans include that VDA license. Now let's talk about the Microsoft 365 application products, the Office apps, the desktop apps that get installed on a user's desktop. So they have two flavors, the two bullets there, apps for business and apps for enterprise. Apps for business is not supported in a virtual desktop. You can install it on a laptop, and they can install it at home, but they can't install it and use it in a virtual desktop. They would have to have apps for enterprise to be supported in a virtual desktop. However, it should be noted that Microsoft 365 Business Premium includes App for Business, but Microsoft does allow users to sign that plan to use the Office desktop app in a virtual desktop. So here we have our last slide. So this is the 365 base plans for virtual desktop comparison. And on the left, you have all of the different base plans. And then across the top, you have whether or not they're supported, how you would obtain the license, whether it's included or you have to purchase it as an add-on, and then whether or not the Office desktops are supported in that with that plan. So one thing I want to point out is an asterisk on the Microsoft 365 Business Premium, which is the third one down in the middle. It's a little asterisk on the add-on there. So when a virtual desktop is in Azure, the Windows 10 11 Enterprise add-on license is not required. However, if they're running if the customer is running virtual desktops in their own environment or a third-party hoster like Evolve IP, then the add-on license is required. I know I went through quite a lot very quickly, but it's time for Q&A.
Well, let me first say that my head is spinning. And for those of you on the telephone that have been keeping track of all the links that Scott's been posting while John's spoken, you know very well why we have two people that are Microsoft experts that work at Evolve IP. So I saw a lot of questions come through. Zach, I want you to start last in, first out. So whatever the last question was that was asked, since that's probably going to be most fresh in people's mind, although I was lost a few slides back. But
Yep.
Zach, I'm going to turn this over to you for Q&A.
Yep. Okay. Most recent question is there a minimum order size on the Microsoft 365 Premium?
No, there isn't. There's just a max of 300, and that's the same for all their plans. You could purchase one, and Microsoft would be happy with that. But there is a max of 300 on the small business plans.
Okay. Are private universities considered government accounts / public cloud customers?
No, they're not. Universities can get, let me go to that slide real quick. So universities have their own license types. They're considered education customers, and they're included in Microsoft's commercial cloud physically, but they purchase separate licenses. I believe they start with an A. So instead of an E3, it would be an A3 for the EDU licenses. And then nonprofit customers, they also have their own set of SKUs in Microsoft's world.
Cool.
And John, we don't sell education licensing, correct? Or we
Correct.
do?
We do not do that. Now, keep in mind that for nonprofit and EDU customers, they have to go through a vetting process with Microsoft to get that designation. And then once that designation is applied to their 365 tenant, a CSP partner can then sell those licenses to that customer.
Cool. We had one question that was a little bit vague, so I might need you to. So Sam Sansom asked, what do these each cost and what are you including in your bundles? Sam, can you reiterate your question in the chat?
And I think let me take a crack at that. So on the licenses from Microsoft that we sell, We are selling them at Microsoft rates. Okay. As a partner, you get paid 8% of that. Okay. And they are not eligible for spiff payments. So I think, and again, unless you've got something you want to clarify in the chat line, whatever Microsoft sells it for is what we sell it for. We do not support enterprise agreements. That's really in Microsoft's world. We don't support government licensing. We don't support education and nonprofit licensing, just commercial. John, was that accurate?
Pretty much, yep.
Okay. Another question. Can they have 300 business, then E3 for anything over 300?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, they can have less than 300 on the business and still purchase the enterprise licensing.
Okay. If you add 50 licenses, does it restart the agreement period?
No, it does not. Nope. It's you would start, let's say, for example, you make a purchase on January 1 and your renewal date is the next January 1. You can increase your quantities throughout the year, and that renewal period will stay the same.
All right. How competitive are your licensing pricing in comparison to Microsoft Direct?
It's exactly the same.
Exactly the same.
And again, one thing I want to make sure that people understand, there's a benefit to clients for buying the licensing from us. They get 24/7 support. They don't get any support from Microsoft. And there is a reason that you should buy the licensing. You get paid. You don't get paid from Microsoft. Next question.
Can Office 365 be sold outside the USA through a CSP partner?
So, and it looks like the example country is Haiti. So that's a good question. So Microsoft CSP partner to like Evolve IP can only sell licenses in the country that they're selling. So for example, if we wanted to sell licenses to a customer in Haiti who had a tenant, a Microsoft 365 tenant in Haiti, we would have to reach out to Microsoft and become a Microsoft CSP partner for the country of Haiti. So right now we can sell licensing to customers who are in the US and Canada. So if you know that you've got some customers that are Canadian, we can sell those licensing to them.
And I can tell you, if there's 2 customers in Haiti, we're probably not going to want to pursue that. Keep going, Zach.
Can customers switch from a CSP partner back to themselves?
Yeah, in other words, to go Microsoft Direct, yes, they can.
Are there any advantages to using a CSP over EA discounts?
Yeah, so each reseller and CSP partner gets to set their own pricing and solutions. So that kind of a answer would be it depends.
Okay. And then the first question we got before we go back to the top was the offering looks incredible. I believe Don was referring to Office in a Box, but what can be done for those of us whose target client size is 10 to 25 users?
So we can support Office in a Box as low as 30 customers. Anything below that, it would just be cost prohibitive. Then I think there was some new questions that were posted from the time you started.
So can you please confirm whether you can provide direct routing calling plans to education, nonprofit, GCC, GCC High, and DoD?
So we can sell the Microsoft Teams phone and calling plans for commercial customers and nonprofit customers. We do not sell to GCC or to education.
Can't remember if you included pricing on your bundle slide, but if you did, then these would not have included Microsoft license prices.
Correct. The slides do not include any prices.
I think this is the last one.
No, I have one too that I want to make sure I said. So Josh had asked, so the VDI Windows license basically keeps customers from buying extra Windows 10 licensing. We're confirming if you buy VDI Windows licensing, does that keep customers from having to buy extra Windows 10 licenses?
So it depends. So there's two license types for Windows 10 11. Let me go to that slide again. And basically, if they purchase the E3 or the E5 without the VDA, the device that's connecting to the virtual desktop must have a professional edition activated on it. So say a user has a corporate laptop with Windows 10 Professional activated on it, then the customer could purchase E3 or E5 without the VDA and assign it to that user. Now, if the user is using, it was working from home and using the home edition of Windows, or they've got thin clients, Chromebooks, Mac OS, they need to purchase the VDA license, which is that second bullet.
Zach, back to you.
So thanks for the session. Although this is good to review, find licensing scenarios are more challenging than simple program overviews. Maybe another session on specifics.
Well,
Customer.
we will definitely consider that. Guys, this has been helpful, if not complex. So I likely we'll need to do this again. Again, remember that while Evolve IP is a CSP, we want to sell our core services. Happy to support people with their needs for Microsoft licensing, but the goal is to drive them towards our core products. Our core products being Office in a Box, Desktop as a Service, infrastructure, and Teams Voice. First of all, Scott, John, I want to thank you. Appreciate your time. I do want to say at 12:44, I want to wish everybody a happy holiday and a wonderful new year. We got a lot of work cut out for us next year, and I think if we get this done, we're gonna all have a great year. Zach, one quick question for you. Did you record this, and will you be sending out a copy to everybody?
Yes and yes.
And then two, there was an awful lot of material that Scott had put into the chat line.
I'll include all the links. Yeah.
Outstanding. Guys, terrific session. Thank you all. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. We will see you next year.
Cool. Thanks, everybody.